the list, right? Okay. All right. So some key terms that I've kind of probably already started saying that we're going to say a lot, so it's important that we have a good working definition of these. The immune system, especially for vertebrates, we have two main components. We have what's referred to as your innate immunity and your adaptive. And the thing is these two aren't completely separate, right? They do work in conjunction with each other. But there are distinctive differences. So your innate is encoded in your DNA, right? You're born with this ability, right, to generally defend yourself. So you have anatomical barriers, right? Stop the stuff from getting in that you're born with. I will. You have sensor systems, right? So ways of detecting that the bad guys have gotten in. So for your house, what anatomical barriers might you have for stopping people to get in? The doors. You might even have, before the house, even have what? A fence, a wall, right? Some type of barrier. What are the barriers for our body that stop stuff from getting in? Your skin, right? Your skin is your greatest barrier. Do you have openings in this, though?
Yes.
Yeah. Your eyes, your nose, your mouth.
Very small pores.
Yeah, very small pores in the skin itself. So do you have to be able to sense when something breaches that barrier?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have sensors. What sensors would you have at your house? You might have an alarm system, right? Or an old-fashioned alarm system.
Doorbell?
Yeah, but do robbers ring the doorbell?
No.
Not normally, right? I had a pretty awesome dog before he died last year, right? I could tell by his bark if it was the UPS guy or the mailman or my friend coming to visit, right? He had a distinctive bark for each one of them. He was pretty awesome. And he was pretty ferocious looking. So if you didn't know, and even my friends, a couple of my friends would not come into my yard. She'd be on the phone. Put the dog in the house. Can't get to the door. Right? So you have these sensor systems. So the same thing, right? You want that system, too, to know the difference between the UPS guy or your friend or a robber that's coming to take everything you've got. So your body is the same way, because guess what? Your body is a big, fat, juicy cheeseburger to pathogens. You are food and home, right? So they want you. They want you bad, right? So are they going to try and get past these barriers? You betcha. Are they going to even try and get past the sensors? Yeah, that's when we get sick, right? That's when we have infection, is when they've gotten in. They've gotten past our sensors, or our sensors are going off, and, okay, so what? Who cares if your dog barks and the alarm system goes off at your house? You know, there was a freaking car alarm going off 2 nights ago. I wanted to kill it. Right? What good is the alarm if what doesn't happen next? So the police don't come, right? If the alarm goes off to your house, right, and the police don't come, nobody's going to catch the robber, right? If my dog barks, right, and I don't come, right, or it doesn't deter them from coming into my yard, then it doesn't do me much good, right? You got to have sensors, and they've got to communicate that information to the ones that are going to take care of the problem. So in our body, who's going to take care of the problem? We just learned about them. But yeah, the neutrophils and the macrophages, right? Because what do? They literally eat the invaders by phagocytosis. They engulf them, destroy them, right? So for your house, especially for my dog, my friend wouldn't come in because she was afraid my dog was going to do that, right? She was afraid he was going to eat her, right? And I honestly can't say whether he would have or not. He scared me even a few times when he didn't know it was me. The minute my voice, I was like, Blue, it's me, and he settled down. But before that, he scared the crap out of even me. He was a really good guard dog. So, yeah, we've got really good guard dogs in our system, right? We've got macrophages and neutrophils that are going to engulf and literally destroy, eat the invaders. And how are we going to get them there? What's our most common response when we have invasion, when we have injury?
Inflammation.
The inflammatory response, right? That's going to get them to where they need to go. So does all of this always work? No, we just said, what if the alarm goes off and nobody comes, right? What if the alarm goes off and the macrophages don't get there, or the neutrophils don't get there? Or when they get there, they can't do their job, right? There are really nasty pathogens out there that can escape the phagosome. There are ones that can live inside the phagolysosome. So we've just dumped digestive enzymes on them. They're like, yeah, I'm good. You're not getting me. It's not good news for us, right? If we can't kill it, then it's going to continue to grow. So, do we want to just stop here? Innate's good enough? Clearly not, because we just said they can get past the barriers. The sensors can go off. We can engulf them, and sometimes we still won't kill them. And that's it. That's the end of this system, right? If our phagocytic cells can't take care of them, or we can't recognize them, or they hide, they're going to eat us alive and eventually potentially kill us. So, no, different story. But that's, that's an invasion from within. That's a malfunction of the internal system, right? Cancer, right, is your cells behaving badly, not doing their job and doing things that it's not supposed to do. And it's quite complex, right? So it depends on the cell, where in the body, and how badly it is behaving, and to what degree, right? Which is why it's such an ugly mess, right? That word, unfortunately, is hugely encompassing. But the easiest way to think of it is our cells behaving badly. And it can be from infection, right? There are some viruses that can cause our cells to derail and behave badly too, right? Or it could just be our cells malfunctioning, whether it be due to genetic defect or just unfortunate circumstances.
Leukemia?
Leukemia, so what's in that word? Leuko. It's referring to cancer that affects white blood cells. Right, which is really bad news, right? Because those are our defenders, right? We don't want them cancerous, right? Because then they're not going to be able to protect us. Now, what do you guys think of when I say adaptive? Adapts. Changes, right? So we're stuck with this innate system, right? This is our built-in system. This is all you've got. This is the baseline model of the car, right? But now we want to upgrade, right? And that would be our adaptive immunity, right? This is the upgrade that invertebrates don't have, that vertebrates have, right? This is the ability to protect exposure to antigens, and this involves the B cells and the T cells. So we're going to go into the specifics of this when we get to our next chapter, which is adaptive. But the main players in this that adapt and are able to specifically identify specific invaders, specific antigens, are B cells and T cells. And this is actually, this adaptive immune response is where we got the name antigen. And you know what antigen means? Gen means generate. Anti means against. Right? And what do we commonly make against foreign substances that we were able to measure and detect? Antibodies. So antigen actually means a molecule that reacts specifically with either an antibody or an antigen receptor on a lymphocyte. in the very beginning, they were called antibody generators because when you put some foreign substance into someone's body, they usually made an antibody against it, right? Where the antibody specifically bound to that antigen. That's our antibody response, which is an extracellular response. It's very easy to measure. You can take somebody's blood sample and get those antibodies out. The cellular response, this level of cell interaction, wasn't discovered until later. And so that's why the second half of the definition says, or an antigen receptor on a lymphocyte. Remember, what are lymphocytes?
White blood cells?
Which white blood cells? The B cells, the T cells, and the natural killers. But when we're talking about antigen specificity, we're talking about B cells and T cells. So we have B cells and T cells that specifically recognize these antigens, these foreign substances. As it relates to antibodies, these are Y-shaped proteins that actually bind to the antigens. These are produced by our B cells. But as the name implies, adaptive, do you think you're born with all the possible antibodies you can make?
No.
You sort of are. It's encoded, how to make your proteins is encoded in your DNA. But can your DNA be changed?
Yes.
Yes. And that's what these cells do, is they literally rearrange their DNA to make different B cells and different T cells, to make different antibodies, to make different T cell receptors. That's the adaptive component. They change over time. You literally change and rearrange your DNA to make these cells, to make them different, to be able to possibly interact with all the millions of trillions of antigens out there. It's pretty amazing. What do you mean artificial? Right, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The thing is the DNA you have, right, is set. Yeah. But you literally switch it up, change it. We'll talk about this. You rearrange your DNA to make those antibodies and those T cell receptors. So you do have a set code, right? You can almost think of it as your lottery numbers, right? So you're given your lottery numbers, and then your B cell picks. When it's born, I'm picking 3, 6, 12, 14, and 54. That B cell picks its numbers, and then it's stuck, right? Once you pick your numbers and you hand it to the cashier, can you change your lottery numbers? No. No, she says you're done, right? So that's what your B cells and your T cells do, is they literally pick pieces of the DNA to make those proteins, and once they pick, they're stuck. But you make millions upon billions of B cells and millions upon billions of T cells. Each one of them, when they're born, is unique because we change the DNA. We pick pieces in it each time one of those cells is made. So each time we make a different receptor could bind to a different antigen. Pretty cool, huh? That ability is only for vertebrates. We're the only ones that have that adaptive ability. Right, to make these unique lineages of B cells and T cells. Which is pretty amazing. So, your white blood cells are always found in your normal blood, right? In those general amounts that we talked about, right? And that good mnemonic that helps you remember the order, right? Of never let monkeys eat bananas. You always have tons of neutrophils on the ready, right? So you can call them up the minute inflammation happens, right? And plenty of lymphocytes and monocytes, but when you have infection, your bone marrow is actually going to make more of them, right? How are they going to know they need to make more? Right? How do we get the army to come? somebody gets on the phone, right, on the bat phone, and is like, you know, calling the National Guard. We need them. Hurricane Katrina's coming after us, right? So how does our body do that? That we don't have phones, right? How do our, right, inflammatory response, but this is different, right? This is in the bone marrow. We need neutrophils now. We've got to make some more. How does our body communicate? Well, I'm going to pick on my AMP people, right? How does the endocrine system communicate? Oh, I mean, like, there's a gazillion of them. Hemopoietin is one of them. Erythropoietin is another one. Insulin is another one. What do we generally call all these substances, these chemicals? Hormones. But they're chemical signals, are they not? Released by one cell to bind to a receptor on another cell to tell it to do something, right? So guess what the immune system has? Chemical signals. We call these cytokines. Specifically, the group of cytokines that tell the bone marrow what to do are colony-stimulating factors. They're going to tell those groups of white blood cells, right, that colony of neutrophils, hey, you guys need to double, triple, quadruple, we need you now, right? Or they call up more lymphocytes, right? Or maybe eosinophils. We have to have a way of communicating this, right? That process of making blood cells from your hemopoietic stem cells is called hematopoiesis. I always stumble over that one, right? But how do those cells know who we need to make? They're going to be told, right, by colony-stimulating factors, which can be released anywhere in the body, like at the site of inflammation, at a lymph node, wherever it is, right, that they realize they need reinforcements. They're going to release these substances. They'll travel through the bloodstream to the bone marrow, and those hemopoietic stem cells are going to be triggered to produce that lineage of cells that we need, right? So red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes, we pretty much don't talk about in immunology because that's not their job, right? They carry oxygen. That's their job. Platelets aren't in fact cells, and this is why in anatomy and physiology they're called, the cells and their platelets are called formed elements and not cells. Platelets are not cells. They're fragments of a cell known as a megakaryocyte. These guys contain a lot of enzymes. They're important in the blood clotting cascade, which we're not going to go over in this course. You can do that in anatomy and physiology. Maybe. You should have. Right? But you can read about it. It's not all that complicated. So basically those platelets, I always like to think of them as sandbags, right? We can use them to plug up a hole, but also when they bust open, though, they contain enzymes that are important in that clotting cascade, right? So, but again, they're not cells. They're actually pieces of cells. Right? And then we have our four major groups that we've already talked about, right? Those granulocytes, which are all the phils, right? So who are they? Neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils. And then you have your mononuclear phagocytes. So their nucleus stays intact, and they're mostly phagocytic. So who are these guys? In your blood, they're called one thing, and in your tissue, they're called something else. Monocytes, macrophages in your blood, in your tissue. Monocytes in your blood, macrophages in your tissue. And then dendritic cells sometimes are given their own special class, but again, they're phagocytic. But they're important in that link between innate and adaptive, right? They're going to be communicating with the T cells. And then, of course, lymphocytes are the T and B cells and the non-antigen specific natural killer cells. All right, so we'll end there today and pick it up there on Thursday.